Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies.
It was December 1975. The cold winds from the Nevada desert drifted into the brightly lit streets of Las Vegas, making the year's end feel even sharper. In a city long accustomed to noise and glitter, there was something different in the air that night. The Hilton Hotel, the jewel of the Las Vegas Strip, was overflowing with people. Its showroom glittered with Christmas spirit, golden lights wrapped around pillars, deep green wreaths releasing the soft scent of pine, and stage lights twinkling like a sky full of stars. The hall, which could hold 15,000 people, seemed to throb with a single heartbeat, the excitement of witnessing Elvis Presley's final shows of the year. The murmur of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the shuffle of hurried footsteps merged into a festive overture before the performance. Yet among the sea of faces, there was one image that could make anyone pause: a small girl in the third row, swallowed by an adult-sized seat. She was about 6 years old, wearing a simple blue dress, old but carefully kept. In her arms, she clutched a worn teddy bear, as if it were the only thing she had left to hold on to. Her name was Emma Parker. Just 3 months earlier, her world had shattered in a single cruel moment. Her parents, David and Susan Parker, were killed in a car accident returning from a weekend getaway. A drunk driver had ended their lives, leaving Emma an orphan at an age too young to understand such loss. Since that day, Emma had been living at St. Mary's Children's Home in Las Vegas. There, she spoke little, almost drowning in silence. The staff and other children tried to include her in games and meals, but Emma would only sit quietly, clutching her teddy bear. Eyes distant. Only one thing could still her tears: the music of Elvis Presley. Sister Margaret, the gentle nun in charge of Emma's care, noticed that whenever the radio played Elvis, the child would sit still, listening, her lips sometimes moving faintly to the melody. So, she bought several Elvis records and placed them in the common room, so that Emma could listen whenever she wished. The ticket to that evening's Elvis concert came to Emma as if from fate. Dr. Robert Chen, a pediatrician who volunteered at the orphanage, had bought a pair of tickets as a Christmas gift for his wife. When she fell ill and couldn't attend, he remembered Emma, the little girl whose eyes lit up at the mention of Elvis. "I think this little girl needs to see Elvis more than anyone," he told Sister Margaret. At first, Sister Margaret hesitated. A late-night concert, a huge crowd. Was it right for a child? But Dr. Chen reassured her someone would go with Emma, and he believed this could be the first step in her healing. That afternoon, Sister Margaret helped Emma choose her blue dress, the last birthday gift from her mother, smoothing out every wrinkle. Maria Santos, a young nurse, volunteered to accompany Emma for the evening. Maria had grown up in foster care herself, understood loss, and knew the value of small acts of kindness. When the taxi pulled up to the Hilton, Emma looked up at the neon lights, pressing her cheek to the window, her eyes both curious and cautious. Inside the hotel lobby, the mix of noise, light, and perfume felt foreign but magnetic. Maria bent down and asked softly, "Are you excited to see Elvis?" Emma nodded. For the first time in weeks, a small smile flickered at the corner of her lips, faint, but enough for Maria to notice. Maria led Emma to the third row, close to the stage, the dream spot for any fan. The seat was far too big for her small frame, but the nearness to the stage made her little heart race. In her arms, the worn teddy bear felt like a shield against the overwhelming sea of adults waiting around her. The air in the showroom thickened as the lights began to dim. Conversations faded, replaced by an almost suffocating anticipation. And then the room erupted in cheers as Elvis Presley appeared. He wore his iconic white jumpsuit, studded with crystals that caught the lights like stars. stepping out to the pounding rhythm of the band. The hall seemed to tremble, but Emma, instead of screaming, sat still, her eyes wide, fixed on the man whose voice had once lulled her to sleep through an old radio. The first notes rang out, deep and powerful, wrapping around the room and reaching the most hidden corners of her young heart. For months, Emma had lived in a cold, muted world where every sound felt dull, except for this voice. Now, it was here, in front of her. No walls or static in between. And something remarkable happened. The faintest curve at the corner of her lips, her first smile in months of darkness. Song followed song. The audience sang along, clapping and laughing, but around Emma. A few had noticed her, a tiny child sitting alone, clutching a teddy bear in a sea of grown-ups, a sight both unusual and quietly heartbreaking. Then came the moment that would change everything. In the middle of interacting with the crowd, Elvis scanned the faces. He had a rare gift for spotting individuals in the largest of audiences, and this time, his gaze landed on Emma. In an instant, something in her expression told him there was an untold story, a quiet sorrow behind those young eyes. He moved toward the edge of the stage nearest to her. The crowd assumed he was about to shake hands or joke with someone. But no, his eyes were fixed on Emma, bending slightly, microphone in hand. His warm voice rang out, "Hello there, sweetheart. What's your name?" Emma looked up, eyes wide, clutching her teddy tighter. Maria leaned close, whispering, "Go on, honey. That's Elvis." Emma. The word was so soft it barely carried to him, but to Maria, it was a miracle. The first clear word she'd heard from the child in weeks. Elvis smiled, and the expression seemed to lift a fog from around Emma, but he didn't just move on with the show. Instead, he reached out his hand toward her. "Emma, would you like to come up here and sing a song with me?" The hall fell silent. Anyone who had seen Elvis perform knew this wasn't part of the script. It was an invitation straight from the heart. For a little girl who had touched the deepest part of his gentleness, Maria gave Emma's hand a reassuring squeeze and whispered, "Go on, sweetheart. Elvis is waiting." And so, under the warm gold of the stage lights, Emma stood, clutching her teddy bear, following Elvis, who stepped down from the stage himself to take her small hand. When Elvis's large hand gently enclosed Emma's tiny one, the entire room of more than 15,000 people seemed to hold its breath. The man who was used to spotlights, roaring cheers, and wild applause now walked slowly, matching the short steps of the little girl, as if wanting to stretch out this tender moment for as long as possible. The stage lights cast their silhouettes, one tall, one small, into an image that made many quietly wipe away tears. This was no longer part of a performance. It was a scene from a film, and the audience had become unplanned witnesses to a story with no script. Reaching the stage, Elvis led Emma to the center. He bent down slightly, adjusting the microphone to her height, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder as if to shield her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said, his warm voice carrying across the hall, "I'd like you to meet a very special friend, Emma, 6 years old, who loves music as much as any of us." Applause rang out, not loud and frenzied, but warm, affectionate. Emma still clutched her teddy bear, her eyes shy but calmer now, under Elvis's protective arm. He crouched to look directly into her eyes, as if no one else existed around them. "Would you like me to sing a very special song just for you?" Elvis asked, his tone like a lullaby. Emma gave a small nod, and then, without warning the band, Elvis began to sing "Love Me Tender." But that night, he wasn't singing to 15,000 people. He was singing to one little girl. Each note fell soft and careful, as if afraid to break her fragile heart. Then something no one expected happened midway through the second verse. A tiny, trembling voice joined in. Emma was singing along. For the first time since losing her parents, she was singing. Maria, watching from the audience, couldn't hold back her tears. Neither could the people around her. They knew they had just witnessed a miracle, not one crafted by special effects or bright lights, but by the genuine kindness of a human being. As the song ended, Elvis held Emma's hand firmly and turned to the audience. Sometimes, music brings us exactly what we need, at exactly the moment we need it. Emma reminded me tonight, love and kindness are the greatest gifts we can give each other. The hall filled with applause. But it wasn't the usual roaring kind of a concert. This was slower, deeper, more emotional, a sound that felt like a thank you, an unspoken agreement that everyone had just witnessed something extraordinary. Elvis kept holding Emma's hand, leaning down so his words were just for her, yet the microphone caught every syllable. Emma, there's something I want you to remember forever. Your parents aren't here anymore, but you are never truly alone. There will always be people who love and care for you. And whenever you hear my music, remember, you are a very special little girl. His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes were steady, as if willing strength into her small frame. Many in the audience couldn't hold back their tears. Maria, who had seen Emma through months of silence, felt her throat tighten. Then, to the surprise of his band, Elvis removed the white scarf from around his neck, the kind of keepsake fans would fight for, and gently tied it around Emma's wrist like a bracelet. So you'll always remember tonight. And know that in my eyes, you're one of the most important people in the world. Emma looked up, her eyes glistening with a warmth that was new, fragile, but real. And then, something magical happened. She spoke, clearly and firmly, her voice carrying through the microphone like a whisper in the quiet crowd. Thank you, Elvis. I love you, too. The crowd erupted in cheers, but woven into that sound were the quiet sobs of hundreds. Not everyone knew the whole story, but they all understood that some empty place in the little girl's heart had just been filled. That night, the rest of Elvis's show changed completely. It was no longer just a concert. It became a gathering of shared humanity, where every song and every word carried twice the emotional weight. When Elvis gently led Emma back to her seat, Maria instantly saw the change in her. The eyes that once held a shadow now shone with light, and her lips moved eagerly as she whispered about the scarf she had just received. This was no longer the silent, withdrawn Emma, but a little girl eager to recount every second on stage, as if afraid the memory might fade. Audience members nearby approached one after another, placing a hand on Maria's shoulder, smiling warmly at Emma, and whispering words of encouragement. You're a lucky little girl. You sang beautifully, Emma. Some even shared their own stories of loss, extending the circle of comfort around her. In the second half of the show, Elvis seemed renewed, singing with a special fervor, as if every song that night was meant not only for the audience, but especially for Emma. The entire room had shifted. They were no longer just spectators, but a community who had just experienced something sacred together. The next day, the story of the little girl Elvis brought on stage began to spread across Las Vegas. Local newspapers reported it, and radio stations recounted the moment as proof that, in the glamorous yet often cold world of show business, pure kindness still existed. Back at St. Mary's Children's Home, Emma returned with a smile the sisters hadn't seen in months. She began singing more often, joining in games with the other children, and even speaking openly about her parents and that magical evening. Sister Margaret knew this was a turning point that months of therapy had failed to create. Emma's story didn't stay in Las Vegas. The image of Elvis bending down to tie a scarf around a little orphan girl's wrist appeared in newspapers across America. But more importantly, it touched the hearts of complete strangers. Within weeks of that night, St. Vine, Mary's began receiving letters and phone calls from all over. Some sent blessings, others sent Christmas gifts, and several couples expressed their wish to adopt Emma. Not everyone met the requirements, but all were moved by the story of a little girl who found her voice again through a moment of love. 6 months later, Emma was welcomed into a family. They knew exactly what she had been through, and they promised to continue the healing that Elvis had sparked. In her new room, Emma hung the white scarf where she could always see it, not just as a memory of Elvis, but as a reminder that there are people willing to reach out when you are lost. As for Elvis, in later interviews, he recalled that night as one of the most meaningful of his life. Not because it was recorded or written about, but because he knew music and kindness had truly saved a young soul, and perhaps it had saved him too. Reminding him of the reason he first stepped onto a stage. Years passed, and Emma grew up in the embrace of her new family. She chose the path of becoming a music therapist, driven by the dream of using melodies to heal wounded souls, just as Elvis had once done for her. In every session, when meeting an orphan child or someone facing deep loss, Emma shared her story, not to reopen old wounds, but to plant the seed of hope that miracles can come at any moment, from people we have never met before. The white scarf from that night still sits in a glass frame on her desk, like a lighthouse reminding her that even the smallest act of kindness can change the course of a life. For those who were at the Las Vegas Hilton on that December night, the memory of Elvis holding a little girl's hand and singing "Love Me Tender" under warm golden lights remains vivid. No one remembers every song he performed, but everyone remembers the lump in their throat and the renewed belief in human kindness they carried home. The story continues to be retold, not only as an anecdote about the king of rock and roll, but as proof that true greatness lies not only on stage, but in the heart that can reach the most fragile souls. And perhaps Elvis's greatest legacy was not the hundreds of hit songs or the sold-out shows, but the moment he bent down, held the hand of a 6-year-old girl, and gave her the full warmth of a compassionate heart. If this story has touched your heart, please share it so that more people can believe kindness still exists in this world. And don't forget to hit subscribe so we can continue telling heartfelt stories together.